بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Praise be to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I thank Him and I ask Allah to raise the rank of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his family and his companions, and all those who follow them in excellence until the day of judgment. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the sincere intention. And I want to thank you all for your attendance. May Allah reward you for your efforts to acquire the knowledge of the religion. And I wanted to do several things before we go over these 17 integrals. And I mentioned to you yesterday, and I'm going to remind every day, inshallah, in some form, maybe not the same exact way, but in some form to remind us. I want, Allah, 1 second. As we go on, I know things again, people, time go and a lot of things. I want everyone that attends this class as mandatory reading to read this book, Etiquette of the Learner. If you're going to attend these sessions, you should master this book and implement it in what we're doing. So it was among the first readings that we discussed when we began. It's one of the first books we all read, and some may have missed it, and some may have not reviewed it. But I suggest to every one of us, including myself, and I have done it, and I will continue to do it, is that we read this book at least every 2 weeks as a reminder. It is very small. You're talking about 100 and a little over 100 pages, 103 pages. If you read 10 pages a day, you would finish in that 2 weeks easily, right? Just reading. You don't got to talk, you don't got to commentate, you just read the book. Because if we don't learn how to be seekers of knowledge, we're going to waste a lot of time, right? So this great scholar, Ibn Jama'ah, Badruddin Ibn Jama'ah, was a great Shafi'i scholar. And his book is very important about how to be a student and how to be a teacher and how they work together to acquire Islamic knowledge. So The text is available. For those who can't afford, just send a message to info@mmacinc.org. Inshallah, we will get you the book. But please, I want everyone to master this text and implement it when you attend the sessions. Second point that I want to make, for all of your questions, save them to the last 15 minutes of the class. So that means around 7:45, start posting your questions. Whatever you don't understand, do not put it in the chat box until 7:45. If you put the statement, the question before 7:45, I'm going to delete it. Right? So 7:45 to 8 o'clock, that's when you got the chance to put your questions. It'll allow me and it'll allow everyone else not to be distracted during the class with questions. So the best thing I would suggest for everyone is to have a notepad, and you should get used to this. Have a notepad, and jot your questions down, right? And make the intention to use your pen, right, to record questions. All of you should develop a habit of having a notebook with your questions so they're never forgotten. If they're so important, jot them down. If they don't get answered, you remember my question didn't get answered, and you put it later, or you send it to me, right? In this way, we maximize the class. Thank you, I'll use that, right? Secondly, there's one teacher in the class, and that lowly servant, his name is Amin Muhammad. If you want to give a class, you should make a platform and teach. And whoever wants to learn from you will attend, right? As far as the Post-Fajr reflections, there's one teacher, just one. And that teacher is his responsibility to convey what he's trying to explain from the text, right? So what I'm trying to do is teach. I'm trying to get us to acquire the knowledge. So everything that comes in the way of that, I'm trying to slowly move it out the way so that we can facilitate our learning. We can discipline ourselves and we can accomplish. I don't want to make it so strict where y'all can't be brothers and sisters. That's not what I'm trying to do. I just don't want to be distracted so we can hone in and focus on what we need to learn. Because I'm concerned about some of the students, right, who this is their only opportunity, right? There's their only opportunity to learn. They come here in the morning and they got everything riding for them on these lessons. So we should be considerate of them, even if we know. If we know, we should spend our time teaching and conveying to others, right? We don't need, it's a teacher here already. So go open up another session and teach. If we're here to learn, then we don't have nothing to do but learn, right? And it makes it easy for everyone. Barakallahu bikum. The third and final thing is I want you to ponder on this statement. It is related by Al-Bukhari in his Sahih from the route of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he was among the famous companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, he was among the fuqaha, among the scholars of fiqh, and those who gave judgments among the companions. One time, he said to the people around him, he said, Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, man alima shay'an falyaqul bih. Whoever knows a thing, let him speak by it. He said, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَعْلَمْ فَلْيَقُولْ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمْ. And he said, whoever does not know, let him say, Allah knows best. فَإِنَّ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ أَنْ يَقُولَ لِمَا لَا يَعْلَمْ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمْ. Allahu Akbar. He said, because it is from knowledge, it is a part of knowledge, it is a sign of knowledge that you say to the thing that you do, or about the thing that you do not know, Allah knows best. So I repeat it. He said, "Oh, you people, ya ayyuhan nas, whoever knows a thing, let him speak according to it." You have knowledge, speak, right? And whoever does not know a thing, let him say, Allah knows best. Because it is a part of knowledge to say about the thing you do not know, Allah knows best. So I want you to take that statement. Yesterday, we mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was questioned about the best and worst of places. And he said, I don't know. And I will ask Jibreel. And when he asked Jibreel alayhi salam, Jibreel said, I don't know. I will ask my Lord. And then Allah informed Jibreel that the best places are the Masjid and the worst places are the marketplaces. So we learn from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to say, I don't know in its proper place. We learned from this great companion, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, that if we don't know, say Allah knows best. It's part of the knowledge. And we want to live by these points. As our teacher told us, that saying I don't know is half of the religion. With that being said, we want to always focus on the text we're learning, the explanations that we were given, and then we want to preserve them in our hearts and act according to them with our limbs. And one of the things that I've noticed in our time that many people get confused. It distracts them from acquiring knowledge. And the other thing, it leads to a profound misunderstanding of things. We are, most of us, converts and people who are beginning to learn our deen. Even if we were Muslims all our lives, we are in the form of a convert. In other words, I was a Muslim all my life. I grew up, my mom was Muslim, my dad was Muslim, sometimes generation of Muslim, but I never learned Islam in a organized manner. Let's say that. So I learned some deen. I have a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, a little of that. But no one put it in a structure so that it is prioritized, it is organized, it leads to the next thing, and it all comes in and fits together as one big puzzle. Most of us didn't learn like that. So we try to make all of these things fit, and sometimes because we don't understand the whole, and someone, when they was teaching us, didn't understand the whole, we're putting the parts in the improper place. So what we're trying to do is give a formatted understanding of the religion. So therefore, in time, you'll have the whole picture together. You'll know what parts go with what part. And you won't be making as many mistakes, inshallah. For the sake of time, I'm going to leave this to tomorrow. So if I don't start with it tomorrow, please remind me. I ask of you, please, to remind me that I want to explain the number code that we're using, 3453. Because I realize that sometimes people join the classes later and they're not aware of what we did previously and why we do what we do. So when they come in, they get confused. And a source of confusion for some has been the number 3453. And they believe we made up some numbers, or I made up some numbers, and I've just got a bunch of, bandwagon riders who don't understand. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. But for those who know what those numbers stand for, it is the essence of the Quran and the Sunnah. And it was designed specifically to summarize as brief as possible the Quran and the Sunnah for you to actually apply. So that if you knew what those numbers indicate, and they're only indications to point you to something. 3 points you to something. 4 points you to something. 5 points you to something. 3 points you to something. And those things that you are being pointed to are the essence of Quran and Sunnah and the way of the righteous scholars. But that's neither here nor there for right now. I'll explain it and remind that we even put it up for those so that people come in, they will begin to understand. So just let's keep that in mind. And inshallah, we're going to continue in our explanation of Sulam at-Tawfiq. And we said today that we would explain those 17 integrals or arkan of the prayer. Naam, bismillah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, The essential elements of prayer are 17. The first, intending in the heart. To perform prayer, identifying what has a cause, like the drought prayer, greeting the mosque, the prayer recommended after making ablution, the guidance prayer, and the like, and time, including noon prayer, afternoon prayer, and the like, and intending an obligatory prayer as being an obligation. So he intends the prayer to be obligatory to differentiate it from voluntary prayers. An example of a sufficient intention is to intend, saying within his mind, I am praying the obligatory noon prayer.
So we talked about Arkan as-Salat. And the Arkan as-Salat are those obligatory elements of the prayer that are a part of the prayer. And if one leaves one of them out, the prayer is invalidated. So these 17 things that the author is going to mention are all necessary requisites of the prayer. And it is an obligation on every morally responsible individual to know these obligatory parts. So the first one he mentions is to have the intention in the heart. So this is a niyyah, right? The first obligation to have a niyyah bil qalb lil fi'l, to have the intention in the heart to perform the obligatory prayer. So the intention, its location is the heart. Uttering the intention, meaning speaking the words of the intention, like I intend the obligatory salat of al-fajr, method, right? Nawaitu fard salat al-fajr, as an example, right? That utterance is recommended. However, what is obligatory is to have that intention in the heart at the time of saying Allahu Akbar. So that's one thing, the intention in the heart. And specifying that prayer, which is for a reason or a specific time. So for instance, if you're going to pray the rain prayer, prayer for rain, drought, when it's a drought, right? Or you're going to pray for a moon or sun eclipse, right? These are prayers that are performed for a specific reason. So you must mention them, right? In the intention, meaning they must accompany the intention. So I intend to pray the prayer of al-istisqa, right? Or the prayer of al-khusuf, right? For the rain or for the eclipse, as an example. Or greeting the masjid, tahiyyatul masjid. And if it's for a specific time, so these are prayers that are in a certain time. For example, like al-asr or al-dhuhr or al-duha. That prayer al-duha is for a specific time. There is a time for it. So you mention that prayer. And you intend the obligatoriness of the prayer. So you mentioned that it's an obligation. And you cannot leave that out. So one says, for instance, I intend to pray the fard prayer of Fajr, or the fard prayer of Dhuhr, or the fard prayer of Asr, or Maghrib, or Isha. Mentioning, and when I say mentioning, meaning you have it in the heart, even if you don't utter it with the tongue. But uttering with the tongue helps to keep it in one's heart. And you say it in a way you hear yourself, not loud, right? So you say, right? Usalli fard al-asr. I am praying the fard of Asr. Now, the second interval.
The second, saying with his tongue so that he hears himself, just like all verbal essential elements, Allahu Akbar, with the intention present in his heart, and that is the second of its essential elements.
So the second is that the person says to the extent that he can hear himself under normal circumstances. So this has to be uttered, right? And it is the same as every Rukin Kauli. I want to give you two Arabic terms, right, that you should memorize. Rukin, Kauli, and Rukin Fi'li. Rukin Kauli is an integral of a verbal integral. And Rukin Fi'li is a physical integral. So one integral or requisite is that which is verbal, you utter it, right? Like Allahu Akbar, when you say the Takbir al-Ihram, which is that second integral, right? It is something you say with your tongue, not just in your heart. You utter it in a way that you can hear yourself, Allahu Akbar. And every integral that's like that, you must utter in a way that you can hear yourself. So the example of that, excuse me one second. La ilaha illallah. So the example of that is like at-tashahhud or al-fatiha. These are integrals of verbal integrals, words you utter. Integrals of action are like a ruku, a sujud, bowing, prostration. So in all of these 17 integrals, some of them are integrals of statements and some of them are integrals of action. Every time you have an integral of statement, then you must utter that to the extent that you can hear yourself. And you say Allahu Akbar. And the intention is simultaneous with saying Allahu Akbar. So that intention, that was the first rukn, that's in the heart. When you say Allahu Akbar, at that time, the intention is simultaneous with that. In the heart, I intend the obligatory prayer of Fajr or Dhuhr or Asr or Maghrib or Isha. There are details and conditions related to saying Allahu Akbar. We'll come back to them later. I won't go into those details right now. Now,
The third, standing in obligatory prayers for someone who is able.
so for the one who has the ability, they must stand in the obligatory prayers, right? And if they're not able, then one will sit or be on one side or lie down, depending on one's ability. But the obligation, when one has the ability, is to stand in the prayers. So if one has the ability to stand, even if it is with slight difficulty, then one must stand. One cannot just, it's a little uncomfortable, so let me sit down. And you want to measure it by if standing would lead to further harm or worsening one's condition. If not, then in this case, one must stand. Go ahead.
The fourth, reciting Al-Fatiha with the Basmala and the doubled letters, successively and in order, pronouncing the phonemes from their place of articulation and without mispronunciation, i.e., making mistakes in the vowels that changes the meaning. Mispronunciation that does not change the meaning is unlawful when it is intended. This mispronunciation does not invalidate the prayer when it is not intended.
So the fourth thing is reciting Al-Fatiha. And in the prayer, reciting Al-Fatiha is obligatory for the one who prays alone. So this one who is praying by themselves, they must recite the Fatiha. In every cycle of prayer, every rak'ah, you must recite Al-Fatiha. If one is the Imam or a follower as well, both the Imam and the follower recites Al-Fatiha as an obligatory integral of the prayer. So you know if you're praying alone, that's obvious. If you're praying as the Imam, you're going to lead the prayer. So what about the follower? When the Imam recites Al-Fatiha, the follower listens. When the Imam finishes Al-Fatiha, before he recites another surah of the Quran, he has a pause there. That pause is the time when the follower would recite Al-Fatiha. It is also an obligation to recite all of the verses of Al-Fatiha. So it is a condition for the validity of the recitation of Al-Fatiha in the prayer that all of its verses are recited. And included in that is Al-Basmala, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. That is a verse of Al-Fatiha. So you don't leave it out. In the Shafi'i school, the Basmala, and I should write this so you know that's what is short, Al-Basmala, is to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. That is a verse of Al-Fatiha. So it must be recited. It cannot be left out. Likewise, one must double every letter that has to be doubled in Al-Fatiha for its validity. And there are 14 places in Al-Fatiha where the letter is doubled. Like Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, there's two Ra's, they must be doubled. Iyaka, that Ya is doubled. And throughout Al-Fatiha, there are 14 locations. Now, let me give you, I'll go on before I come back to that. Then, you must recite them consecutively. So you don't pause, right, between the words of Al-Fatiha more than is necessary to take a slight breath, right? So you don't have long pauses between words. And you must follow the order of Al-Fatiha. You recite the verses in the order that they were revealed. And which may be the most difficult aspect of reciting Al-Fatiha, especially for us non-Arab speakers, to pronounce the letters from their places of exit. This you have to learn. And you have to diligently go over it and over it and over it. So what I say is find you a good Quran teacher. At your stage, one who is better than you, for all of us. Because a good Quran teacher is relative. I've discovered that over the years. You know, you may see a teacher and he's good with the Quran. He sounds good to you. put him in front of someone like Sheikh Samir, he needs to go learn Al-Fatiha again. So don't get too wrapped up into that, right? Do your best to improve your recitation of the Quran, right? And continue to do that regularly as an advice. Every single one of us should find us a teacher who has learned the Quranic recitation and how to properly articulate the letters and work on it. Make it a regular practice. It's not something that's going to be easy. And you may go to one teacher and he is easy on you and you get away with a lot of mistakes. And you go to the next teacher who is much stronger than that and he might not let you get away with those mistakes. It's not easy. Let's drop this ego stuff. I love seeing ego people in front of Sheikh Samir. I do. It really brings a joy to my heart. I'm not lying. You get these people who's like, they're amazed with themselves. Remember we talked about early to not have urge to be amazed with yourself? I've seen people, they are brutal to others with their recite. Oh, he can't even recite this or he can't recite this. And then I've seen those people sit in front of Sheikh Samir and they can't get past the first line of Al-Fatiha. And I would be looking like with like, oh, Allah's got someone more knowledgeable than you, huh? Okay. So my point is that's a gradual process, right? I'm only laughing because some people, they know, right? I've seen super huffaz there in their minds. I'm great reciter of the Quran. And they were like, hook me up with Sheikh Samir so I can recite on him. And then when they sit with Sheikh Samir, I'll be like, hey, I didn't see you come back for the lesson. I gotta go practice. No, it's just funny. Those who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. So please, if you have questions, put them down. We're a little bit 3 minutes past and I'm getting ready to stop. So, but all of us, seriously, let us work on our recitation of the Quran. And it's going to be frustrating sometimes, but alhamdulillah, just keep working, It's going to take time and we got a life, do our whole life. However, if you recite in such a way that the way you recite changes the meaning of the Quran, this is haram, right? So you can make mistakes. They may not change the meaning, but they're incorrect. That doesn't invalidate the prayer. But if you recite with mistakes in such a way that it changes the meaning, then this invalidates the prayer. So inshallah, I'm going to, probably next year, we'll have all of our Quran teachers available. I mean, unfortunately, everybody is with this pandemic and some are studying. We're going to be having classes just in reciting Al-Fatiha, At-Tashahhud, all of these verbal integrals, just so that everyone pronounces their prayer correctly as best as possible. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, we'll stop here. We'll come back and continue tomorrow with the third, or what is we, on the fourth integral. If there's any question, please feel free to ask. Barakallahu bikum. Oh, okay. So I think the methodology of remembering, studying, again, please, if I recall correctly, what I think you may be asking about, Brother Ja'far, is there is a methodology of learning or studying traditionally, and it has three aspects basically. The first is you have a basic text that you study in any field. So you have a basic text maybe in belief, a basic text in fiqh, or a basic text in a tasawwuf for spirituality, or whatever you learn in foundations of fiqh, hadith, whatever. That basic text is usually summarized to a point that you can memorize it. That's the design of it. Then you would study that text with a teacher, which we call sheikh, right? Sheikh, ustad, a teacher. That teacher will explain the terminology that you memorize in that basic text to you. So that is his explanation, right? Then you have a third type of reading, which is details, usually with evidence of the verses of the Quran or hadith or statements of the scholars to clarify points that were mentioned in the basic text or in the explanation. So that's your route. So you have, and that is when it's in a book form, it is usually a basic text, then the explanation, then marginal notes, which we call hawashi, right? All of that is with a living teacher. So that is the methodology. So this book we're studying, it is recommended that everyone memorizes it, right? You should memorize the book. And if you're not able to memorize, you should just become extremely familiar with the terms of the basic text, so that when we explain, you can separate explanation from basic text. Then when we add other notes, you'll be able to follow, inshallah, and Allah knows best. Was there a question? Rukn fi'li, what is the definition of a rukn al-fi'li? Rukn al-fi'li means a physical integral. So rukn is an integral, meaning an obligatory part of the prayer. So we said the obligatory part of the prayers are 17, right? So therefore, that rukn fi'li, among those 17 are obligatory parts, which is a rukn, is an obligatory part. Arkan is the plural, right? That involve action. You do something, you move, right? Like you go to ruku, you stand, you bow, you prostrate, you sit. These are actions. That's what's understood from that. Then you have the other one, rukn qawli, that are verbal. It's not an action. Like you recite al-Fatiha, you say Allahu Akbar, you say at-tashahhud, you make salutations on the Prophet. That's verbal. Now, you say assalamu alaikum. These are verbal arkan or integrals, obligatory parts. Now, the al-basmalah is loud in the loud prayers and silent in the silent parts of the prayer. In other words, loud, so everyone pay attention to this. When we say loud in the terminology of al-fiqh, in the Shafi'i school, we're only talking about, please, I am not talking about other than the Shafi'i school. If I should mention another school, I will say this is according to another school, and I'll mention it. And whenever I don't do that, I'm only talking about the Shafi'i school. So in the Shafi'i school, when the scholars of the Shafi'i school, not me, but them, when they say loud, they mean it is loud enough that another person could hear you under normal circumstances. So that's loud. Silent means you say it loud enough that only you could hear yourself. So under normal circumstances, you would hear yourself. Others may not hear you or cannot make out clearly what you're saying. So it is all verbal. It is all uttered words. So it is not just something you say, right, without a sound. It has a sound. right? So you would Allahu Akbar, right? Or so if you're reciting al-Basmala, the whole of the Fatiha, in the silent prayers, you recite it in a way that you only hear yourself. When you recite loudly, you recite the Basmala loudly. Now, just like all the other verses of Al-Fatiha. There are other schools where they recite the Basmala silently and the rest of the verses loudly, because they don't count Al-Fatiha, Al-Basmala as a part of the verse of Al-Fatiha. So that's in a different school. But in the Shafi'i school, it all is recited aloud. Now, no more questions. Barakallahu bikum. So I just want to quickly clarify to you that I'm trying to get somewhere, right? I've been do you say the Basmala before reciting the additional verses after reciting? Oh, you mean from another surah? You mean the surah do you mean the surah after? Is that what you're saying? If you mean the surahs after, yes, you recite Al-Basmala. Al-Basmala is a part of every other surah except surah number 9. So you don't recite surah At-Tawbah with Basmala, with Al-Basmala. But all the other surahs, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is a part of them. So you recite it, yes. You don't leave it out. Allah. During Salat after Al-Fatiha, is the Basmala recited a lot? Yes. In the other verses, that was the same question, yes. In the other surahs, I mean. Tayyib, inshallah, let's patiently work together. Everyone make this intention, please. I want all of us to make this intention. We're going to help all of us together learn our deen as best as we can. If I know, I'm going to help the one who does not know. If I learn and I come to a lesson and they're teaching something that I don't know, I'm going to just benefit and review and assist in strengthening the ranks of those who are learning. Right? It's extremely important. And whoever's a good writer, I would like you to type what I'm getting ready to say so I can share it, right? Here it is. A seeker of knowledge is not a true seeker until they learn from those who know more than them, those who know equal to them, and those who know less than them. I'll repeat. A seeker of knowledge is not a true seeker until they learn from those who are more knowledgeable than them, those who are equal to them in knowledge, and those who are less than them in knowledge. One more time. A seeker of knowledge is not a true seeker until he learns from those who have more knowledge than him, those who have equal knowledge to him, and those who have less knowledge than him. In other words, everyone who seeks knowledge will find knowledge at every level, a true seeker. From those who know more, those who are at the same level as them, as one, even those who know less than one. Everyone, Allah put a benefit somewhere. A true seeker of knowledge is one who looks for benefit wherever he finds it. Right? So not only the knowledgeable person, the seeker, the true seeker, only goes to the scholars. No, he goes to the scholars. He goes to his colleagues in learning and seeking. And he also goes to those who are less than them in knowledge, sometimes just to review. So they sit with people who are less than them, and they study with them, and they learn together, and they benefit each other. And he studies with his fellow seekers on the path, and he goes to his teachers, and he learns from them. All of them become his teachers. The sheikh is his teacher, his colleague is his teacher, his student is his teacher. That's a real seeker of knowledge. Let us all be seekers of knowledge. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, inshallah.